If you want to learn really, really fast, these are the memory hacks you want to use. I promise you, if you go through each and every one and put them into action, you will be able to overcome every obstacle when it comes to learning difficult information and retaining it for the long term. Now, these techniques are related to what memory competitors do, but they go one step beyond, because this is about knowledge acquisition. This is about being able to hold on to that information for the long term. And a lot of other articles that you find out there and other videos that have memory hacks that use that term, they're talking about sleep, they're talking about diet, they're talking about fitness. All of those things will help improve your memory, but they're not hacks. Those are just good things to do, period. So we're gonna dive deep today into the real deal memory hacks, and they are gonna revolutionize your mind and your memory. And I'm giving you them for free because I believe everybody should have access to this knowledge. Hi there, this is Dr. Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com, where I hold some of the most amazing live sessions where we go beyond this whole world of just free stuff that collides with your brain and collapses and you don't know where to look and what to think about the memory techniques. You have no path. Well, we have an ongoing path because we meet in my upper level private community month after month. We record everything in case you can't be there, and it is the most incredible community, and I am absolutely honored to be able to meet with some of the best people ever who take action with these memory techniques, like the techniques you'll hear about today. And if you want to learn more, make sure you get subscribed to this channel if you're new here. Hit that thumbs up for the love of memory, and come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com so you can get started with the legendary free course that thousands upon thousands of people have taken around the world to start experiencing magnetic memory, which allows you to put information in place so that it stays there and you can find it when you want it, while doing the other thing that magnets do: repel the distractions. Get rid of the monkey mind, blah, 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 that makes you feel inadequate, so that you can truly experience that vast universe of consciousness and unlock the power of your mind. Now, as I go through these special memory hacks that I want you to understand, embrace, and use, please realize there's no special order here. You want to use all of them in combination. You can mix and match them. Sometimes you can use 2 at a time. Sometimes you can use 3 at a time. Sometimes you could potentially use all 7 of them at a time. But the most important thing is that you have the knowledge of what they are and that you start to experiment with them. Because one thing that a lot of people don't understand about memory techniques is that there is no perfection with the techniques. There is only progress towards better. And the only way that you get to experience the progress towards better and better, clearer and crisper and tighter memory is by taking action through the form of experiments. That's the number one thing I wish that every person in the world knew. You do not have to wait to have enough knowledge of how these techniques work, but you do need to get started. It's like Yoda 101. Do or do not. There is no try. And the best part is as long as you're doing, you're learning. As one of my favorite philosophers says, to think is to learn. That's Gilles Deleuze. And I memorized that using one of these hacks that we're about to discuss. This first hack I call the Cram Smasher. You know, we all love our free time, which is why a lot of us, whether we're students in high school or university, or maybe we're later in our professional careers and we have certifications or refresher courses that we need to do, we love our free time so much that we save study till the very end and we think, oh, I can just slam all this study into a couple of hours, wake up in the morning, still remember what I need for this exam, and fly under the radar and pass. Well, that is not the path of the mature learner. Instead, we want to absolutely remove cramming from our lives. So, how does the Cram Smasher work? Very, very simple. And this is a memory hack that is almost so simple, some people will say, well, that'll never work. But think about this. It's called a pen and a calendar, and you schedule your study time. And then you show up. to study during that time. Now, the way that I used to do this is pretty advanced when you think about it at the end of the day. And I don't know how I cooked up this idea. Maybe I heard it somewhere, but I got the idea somewhere in my head when I was a university student that I was going to get the syllabi for my courses in advance. Which, if you don't know that word, it just means the list of readings and assignments, the dates that the assignments are due, that a professor hands out at the beginning of the year or the semester. And I sometimes called professors on the phone around July, August to see if I could get it in advance of September. And when I got that in advance, I didn't always get it, but when I did, I already started budgeting my time. See, I had 3 jobs when I was in university, not for the entire experience, but for much of it. And even during the time when I had 1 job, I would show up at 3:30 p.m. and then I would leave sometimes at 3 a.m. because I would get overtime. So I had to schedule things in advance. And it is so empowering to be able to get all the books that you need to read, all the articles in advance, because sometimes you go to the library and somebody else has borrowed them. Then what are you going to do? But if you've read them long in advance, you're covered. And that's the Cram Smasher. Very, very simple. All you have to do is email, knock on an office door, or call the professor. And if you can't get it in advance, well, when you do get it, get your pen, get your calendar, and schedule when you're going to go through that material in advance. And if you want to go to the next level, write your assignments in advance as well. And you never have to cram if you put this into action. And if you're wondering how the heck is this a memory hack, very, very simple. The more time you have to study, the more exposure you have to the information without stress. Stress is known to reduce your ability to encode information and decode it later. Stress ruins your ability to pay attention effectively. Stress is the mind killer, and it is a major, powerful hack to reduce it, if not eliminate it entirely. And this is one of the best ways to do it. Now, did you know that there are over 20 memory techniques to choose from? I have used a wide range of these. I use 5 regularly in combination, and I would love for you to be able to learn what they are. I have a very, very special post on my website at magneticbrainmethod.com/memory-techniques. I'll have the link for that below, and you can go and dive into all of those different techniques. I range from beginner techniques, introductory techniques, to advanced techniques, and each of them is a hack unto themselves. But the larger overarching point and the hack is to understand that there are such things as memory techniques. There's a wide range of them, and the more that you know about them, the more practiced you are with them, the more you're going to be able to use that time that the Cram Smasher gives you to be able to apply the memory techniques. And it works very simply. When you have information that you need to memorize, you encode it and place it in a memory palace. Now, what does that mean? Well, it just means that if you have some sort of term or formula, what you're going to do is you're going to think about a place in a room, like for example this room, and you're going to then make some crazy images that you place in the room, and then that's going to help you recall the information. Now, there's a lot of science behind how all of this works, more science than anybody has time to read. Decades of memory competition results and thousands of years of tradition. So you can either go in ignorance of it or doubt it and be skeptical, or you can be a true skeptic and just learn the techniques and put them into action. But it's really, really that simple. And one example that comes to mind is I remember from years ago when I was in university, architectonic tautology. And I just saw an archer in one of my rooms, and I saw a couple of other things that helped me remember this idea of tautology. Like I saw Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and he was pulling on a string tight, and that actually helped me remember what a tautology is, which is a circular argument. And the reason why I use Tigger, not only because it has a T sound and pulling something taut, is because he actually uses a tautology. So a tautology is a circular argument, and he says, the wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tiggers are wonderful things. They bounce and trounce and trounce and bounce and fun, 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 fun. But the most wonderful thing about Tiggers is I'm the only one. The only one, right? So it's just like the most amazing thing. And that's just happening in a room. And it helped me remember. An archer shooting Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and he's pulling something taut, and he's singing that song to remind me of what a tautology is, architectonic tautology. And you can scale this out, provided that you know all the memory techniques that I want to share with you, and you put them into practice, which you're going to have time for when you use the Cram Smasher. Tony Buzan said in a book called Mind Map Mastery that he abandoned mind mapping as a memory hack long ago, and I think that was premature. Now, there are many, many more experiments that people need to do to fully explore how that mind mapping can be a memory hack. But here are 3 things to consider that you can start using today. First, Phil Chambers says in 101 Top Tips for Better Mind Maps that you can review your mind maps and keep track of how many reviews you've done by putting a simple Roman numeral in the bottom right corner. And he, if I remember, recommends 10 reviews in order to deeply absorb whatever you've put on the mind map that you want to remember. That's one thing. Now, you can also combine mind maps with memory palaces, or you can turn mind maps into memory palaces. So let's talk about these as separate things. The first way that you can make a mind map a memory palace is to use it in a particular structural form. So if you imagine that you're memorizing something about math or geometry or physics or whatever the case may be, if you take just the core concept that you're dealing with and you place it in the center, then if you surround the images with a clock-like structure of the different ideas that you're responsible for, then you can use that clock-like structure as a mental reference point to navigate your mind map without even looking at it. You've effectively turned the mind map into a kind of memory palace. So again, you're using a clock-like structure to help you remember all of the little details by following them on the mind map. Now, you might be thinking, but that's only 12 points. Well, that's scarcity mindset. The reality is those are 12 points that you didn't have before. And that's the abundance mindset, the kind of abundance you have when you use the Cram Smasher, because you have so much free time. And if you're wondering how much free time that you might have, and why I keep repeating free time, well, first of all, I'm a memory expert. I know you got to repeat things 7 times before people pay attention. But also, I wrote 3 novels when I was in grad school because I used such a thing. So if you enjoy your free time, remember, Cram Smasher, Cram Smasher, Cram Smasher, Cram Smasher. Now, the thing is, if you want to take mind mapping to the next level, you not only use them as a kind of memory palace, which is a very good thing to do. I max out at 12 different spots, but you can also simplify it with just the cardinal points like north, south, east, west, etc. But also, you can take that mind map structure, build the mind map, and then layer it on a wall in a memory palace. So I did this as a case study when I took level 3 in Mandarin. Now, Mandarin, Chinese, is quite complex. You have characters, you have the tones, you have pinyin that you might be responsible for on the test, and you have the meaning of the word. And that's maybe not all that you might have, because sometimes you have 2 characters, often you have 2 characters to make a word, and maybe you have an entire sentence. But what I did is I placed the character in the middle of my mind map, and then I did basically a very simple clockwise structure, and then I mentally placed it on a wall so that I could use a process called recall rehearsal to rapidly get all that information into long-term memory so I could go and pass my test and get my certificate. And it was wonderful how well that it works. Not 100% bulletproof, but nothing is, nor does it have to be, to have an amazing advantage and get top grades. I don't have any needles around here, but you want to inject novelty and variety into everything you do in every way that you possibly can. So what do I mean by this memory hack? Well, novelty is when you have new things that are coming at you all the time. This is part of what memory scientists sometimes call active recall. The more novelty you have, the more your brain is going to naturally remember things. So some of the ideas here are to study in different locations. So if you study for half an hour in the library, then you move to a bench outside, then you move to perhaps your kitchen table, and then you move again to a friend's house where you're studying together, etc. These kinds of movements can really help your brain. It's novelty. Now, there's different brain chemicals that are produced that people believe are part of the formation of memories faster and more robustly because of these changes. But there's another form of novelty which is involved in something they call interleaving. So interleaving is something that I've used a lot in combination with changing locations, and that is switching between topics, between books. So what I used to do, and still do to this day when I go to libraries, is I would grab piles of books from different topics and then spend 15, 20, 30 minutes on one book, then switch to the next, then switch to the next, and then I would ultimately leave that pile of books, go to a different part of the library, grab another pile of books, and do the process over and over and over again. And it is part of how that I've been able to remember a lot more. And it's also using location-based memory, which we know is profoundly capable of remembering locations and spaces. And when you match in that variety of changing spaces, novel new spaces, then you're getting a bigger bang for your buck because you're also changing books and you're using physical books in a library which have more spatial dimensions. For example, a Kindle device or an ebook reader has only one flat screen. It's only a surface. It has no physical dimension. Where's halfway through an ebook? Whereas your brain knows where halfway through a physical book is, and it maps that data out in a way that helps your memory. But there's another angle to this that's really, really important. When you're using memory techniques, like I gave you that image of the archer, right, and Tigger pulling something taut for architectonic tautology, well, when you have multiple associations like that in memory palaces or on mind maps or both, well, then you're giving yourself what? You're giving yourself variety. And when you're using memory techniques correctly and well, which is what I love teaching people to do, you're also giving yourself endless novelty because you're combining things together in novel ways. Now, an archer, like Robin Hood, together with Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, that's novelty. That's new. They're not normally together. And in many of my images, I have all kinds of crazy things that never go together. Cameron Diaz in The Terminator is only something in my mind. It's new, it's variety, and it helps my brain remember more. And it's going to help your brain remember more too. You just have to practice, experiment, and then keep practicing and experimenting. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, sometimes people think that I'm pro memory techniques without things like rote or things like software or things like flashcards. But actually, I do sometimes use flashcards, and I use them in a strategic way. I amplify them. And one of the ways that we do that is just to combine in some of the ideas that we've already talked about. So when I had to memorize some mathematical symbols for a book on logic that I was reading, I just simply used these cards to help me be able to see the symbols that I was using for operator and condition and totality and so forth. And then I used multiple colors in order to give some of that novelty and variety, and I placed them in memory palaces in order to get that spatial memory effect. And just simply by creating them, I was done. And I was using my hands, which gave me just a wonderful bit of variety in terms of the kind of activity. So I think that if you amplify how you're using flashcards, they're very, very powerful. And I think I've given you some clues on how to do that. Use multiple colors. Use the combination of the information that you've placed on the card in a memory palace. And make it a bit of a puzzle. Make it something that you have to solve. So when I looked at this one in particular, I had to think, what is that guy doing? Oh, he's calling the operator. So that means that symbol is the operator. And by having your brain do a little bit of work, which is part of active recall, then you're allowing memories to form faster. But if you just cheat, if you have the answer on the back of the card, you're not giving your brain the opportunity to solve a puzzle, which means that it's not doing that little bit of challenge that's going to form memories faster in the brain. So this is a major, major set of hacks, all combined into the simple title of Optimise, how you use flashcards. Now let's get into some real next level stuff. If you want to improve your memory and you want to have great memory for using memory techniques, which involve, some original kind of ideas like mixing together an archer with someone like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, if you want to be able to be better at that, practice remembering the stories that you watch in movies and remembering the names of the characters in the movies. And this is just a fun way to get in some practice while you're relaxing. So we don't want to take off the emphasis of just chilling out. We want to enjoy the movies. So it's just a very light thing. But after you've watched a movie, just try to replay the story and really focus on the beginning, the images in the beginning, the music in the beginning, the names of the characters that you encountered, any cool things you can bring back that they said, and then do some of that work with the middle of the story and the end, and try to weave it all together. This is a hack that's going to help you with the visual imagery and some of the other things, like what things sound like. So you can use sound in your encoding work when you're using things like memory palaces and mind maps. This is really, really powerful. It's easy to do, and it'll also ultimately give you more joy when you feel like you're just wasting time vegging out, watching series on Netflix or what have you. Rather, what you're doing is giving yourself what you might call passive memory exercise. So when you're not trying to memorize the movie and so forth, you're just watching it. Well, this is just allowing yourself to absorb it and enjoy it. But when you then ask yourself later, what did I remember from that? It's just passive. You didn't memorize it. You're just asking yourself what you remember, which is going to strengthen your memory. We know this. There's lots of studies on it. Dr. Gary Small is someone you can look into. He was on my podcast if you want to hear it from him, from his studies. Really, really interesting stuff. Now, there's an active version, which is where you actually memorize the names of characters, which is very, very simple. I mean, I was watching the new Lord of the Rings series, and Galadriel comes. I didn't know the old version of Lord of the Rings very well, so, this is all new to me, but Galadriel, Elrond, all this kind of stuff. And when I see Galadriel, I just think of, Gal Gadot and, that kind of association. She's an actress who played Wonder Woman, if you don't know her, and now she's mixed up with this new character, and that's active memorization of story elements. Both are great. Both give your brain memory exercise, and they're just hacks that allow you to have greater memory overall and use memory techniques better. Along these lines, just make memory projects part of your life. Always have something going on where you're actively memorizing whatever it is that you feel called to do. You could memorize the preamble of the Constitution. You could memorize chess openings. You could learn music and start to remember the notes on the fretboard of a guitar or on a saxophone or a trumpet or whatever you feel called to study. This is going to be wonderful for your memory. And there's just many, many things that you could do. One of the things that I have in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass is a number of 30-day memory challenges that you can undertake if you're lacking for ideas. But I think I just gave you a bunch of ideas because there's endless series on Netflix where you could just do some of that practice. But I would encourage you to go a bit deeper than that. And one of my own projects is to memorize a little bit of Sanskrit each and every day. And this has been a wonderful challenge, not only because of the vast volume that I'm dealing with, but also because it's unusual language and it's not always clear what I should do. Galadriel and the idea of Gal Gadot, these are quite clear and easy, but there are things that just, they're a real challenge. And this constant growth, because I have this big memory project in my life, allows me to consistently experience challenge, which leads to consistent experience of growth. So whatever it is that you feel called to do, you don't have to find the perfect thing the first time. Just find something, be a finder of things, an explorer, an experimenter, and that's how you will grow. And one day, if not very, very soon, you'll hit on something that just astonishes you, that you fall in love with it and you become a great custodian of that knowledge because you have it in your head and you're able to enjoy it within your mind, contemplate on it from this wonderful space that you've cultivated called your magnetic memory. And with thanks to our channel members, to everybody who has one of my books or courses, I am so grateful that you are part of this community. I want to suggest that you become a devoted master of your memory. What do I mean by master of memory? What is mastery anyway? I got a whole video on that topic. So if you want more hacks and the ultimate hack that will keep you constantly excited and personally fulfilled as you grow with this miracle of memory and how that you've made it extraordinarily powerful through the development of it as a skill, watch my video on what it means to be a master of the memory palace technique next.